What an exciting day in NFL free agency, especially for us fantasy footballers. And today in Utah Sports, we are going to be breaking down the impact of every free agency move on fantasy football. So if you are playing best ball fantasy football and drafting now, or planning to play fantasy football in the future, this is the place for you to get up to date on what's happening and what the impact is, not just for the players that are changing, but the associated players. So, for example, when Kirk Cousins moves on to Atlanta, is that good for the other players on fantasy in Atlanta or not? So, we're not talking real life football here. We're talking just fantasy football. And this is the place where you talk sports with us. Today, Alvin and Lisa and Jeremiah are joining us. I'm your host, Greg Wells, and if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you here on Zoom. That's what we're all about in Utah Sports, the show where you get to be in the show. So if you're sick of listening to all these so-called experts giving their takes and want to add your 2 cents in, we're the place where you get to do that. Plus, what you get here are takes from people, specifically their hometown. And we have some of the most important hometowns here. So this is where you're going to get insights and advantages in fantasy football and betting that you're not going to be able to get from other places. And two of the biggest teams that I want to know what's going on with them are the Dallas Cowboys. Who are they going to sign at running back? Tony Pollard is gone. And the Kansas City Chiefs. Who are they going to bring in at wide receiver? And we've got people from those cities here, as well as from Cincinnati, as well as myself. I represent Boston and Tampa, and we'd love to have you here. And we're going to be doing a full breakdown of all the players, all the moves. So if you're watching us on YouTube and want to join us in Zoom, just go ahead and comment in the chat saying the words Zoom, and we'll drop you the link to join us here in the live stream. And if you're here in Zoom, I'm going to drop you the link to hop over to YouTube. Please make sure that you comment on YouTube. By the way, at 10:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, we'll be switching over to our game of the night. We always do a game of the night. It'll be the Celtics and the Portland Trailblazers tonight for our NBA game. We all hang out like we're in the living room. We watch sports together. It's a lot of fun here together. We are here every night. This week, we're on at 8 p.m. Eastern every night this week. And let's dive right into it. So we're going to start with going to Jeremiah, and I want to start with Kirk Cousins. This is kind of the chip or the domino where all the other dominoes start to fall into place after this one. Wasn't the first move today, but it's the most important move because a lot of teams wanted Kirk Cousins, and now that Cousins is gone, let's start with how this impacts Atlanta. Then we're going to touch on Minnesota and what this means for the rest of the league and their quarterback moves. Jeremiah, what's your take on Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta from a fantasy football perspective? What does this mean for him, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts? Those are the core players over there.
First off, howdy y'all. How y'all doing tonight? I think it instantly makes Drake London, Kyle Pitts, probably puts them both up around. My only question is, when will Kirk Cousins be healthy? He's coming off an Achilles injury. He's not the youngest guy out there. I wonder who's going to start the season. I'm not sure that he's going to be ready to start the season.
Yeah, good points on Cousins. And I'll tell you, this is something I've been preaching on Kirk Cousins for a while now. He is 35 years old, going to be 36, coming off an Achilles tear. In almost all the history of the league, his career would be over. Now, with Tom Brady playing into being 45, I think we all have think that this is just the way it goes. And that's not the history of the league. And so I for weeks now have been saying, I don't get why teams are so in love with Kirk Cousins to begin with. Why you would want to give him a 4-year contract like Atlanta has done. I'm happy that our division rival in Tampa has done this. Will it be good for them in the short term? It's certainly better than what they had. And Jeremiah makes a good point here that is not being talked about. Will Cousins even be ready for day one? That's not a given. And if you're on a new team and you're not in training camp, that can set you back. If you remember when Tom Brady went to Tampa, learning a new offense as a quarterback, there's a lot to getting everyone on the same page. That team didn't start clicking until mid-season. So I don't see that it's this automatic home run that makes Atlanta somehow a Super Bowl contender for them to have dropped $100 million on this. Hey, we've got a lot of players and moves to cover tonight. So what we're going to do, I don't want to go around the horn and have everyone chime in on everyone if they don't have anything additional to add. But if you do have something additional to add, let's use the Zoom raise of hand. And I do want to hear from everyone who has something. We just don't want to say, oh, I agree with what Jeremiah said. And I'll just continue on this. So I was very suspect on the Atlanta players to begin with. As somebody who was burned last year by Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan, we don't know yet if they are good in the NFL or if their coaching was holding them back. We assume it was coaching holding them back, but that's not a given yet. So, and Kirk Cousins coming in is a guy who, how is he going to fit in over there? What are they going to do? Who is he going to throw to? How much is he going to throw? So it's not a given. To me, there's still a lot of question marks there, and I don't like to spend high draft picks on promise, on upside. If you drafted Drake London last year, you got burned big time for this. You cannot afford to get burned, and those guys are going high. Drake London's going high, Bijan's going first round. You cannot afford to get burned on those guys. There's way better other picks out there, in my opinion. All right, let's hear from Lisa on the Atlanta situation.
Well, the way I see it is, I was a little shocked that he went to Atlanta, but I mean, Kurt, he's getting his money and he is making the most of his time in the NFL. So props to Kurt, first of all. Secondly, he seems, I understand he's 35, but here's the deal. The more we progress in society, it seems like the younger we get. So 35 isn't what 35 was 10 years ago. And when I watched him, and I've only seen him a little bit, they don't show a lot, but when I've watched video of him, he looks better to me than Aaron Rodgers looks. And Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles before Kirk Cousins. So I am a little, I won't say I'm confident, but I think that he might be ready, maybe not for for training camp, but I think he might be ready for the start, maybe not the start of the season, but early on in the season. And he is not the best choice out there as far as quarterback, but he is steady and he is stable. And if you're just looking for somebody to kind of get you over the hump, he's almost like an Alex Smith was to the Chiefs, I think. Just kind of that place, place setting until you get somebody else. So I don't think it's a bad signing. I think it's good for Kirk because, like I said, he's going to end up with $300 and something million by the end of this whole thing. So I think it's really good for him. And I don't think it's a bad signing for Atlanta. That's how I see it.
He's the best guy on the market. So Atlanta went out, spent money. Let's give them credit for that. He's the best guy that's available. Comparing him to Rodgers doesn't impress me because I don't think Rodgers is going to come back either. And while I agree, if he was I would already have questions if he was a healthy 35-year-old going to a new team. I would have questions about his age and his transition. Anytime you draft an older player, you're going to have question marks about him. And but when you add in the injury on top of that, I think there's just a lot of question marks out there, which makes this a high-risk place to draft any of these players, in my opinion. We don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to feature Bijan Robinson? They sure should. They should feed him the ball nonstop. And that should mean that Cousins' numbers are a lot lower and his receivers' numbers are a lot lower. On contrast to that, is Cousins going to come in and gun like he always did? Which means Bijan's numbers are going to be a lot lower than they were before.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I'm saying there's question marks all around this.
That is true, but I think
I think place to avoid. There's a lot more steady places to get upside than to think Drake London. Right now, to draft Drake London, you'd have to be taking him ahead of people like Rashee Rice and Mike Evans, and there's just no way that's where he's going in ADP drafts. We'll hop over and look at these. And I don't want to spend all our time on Minnesota. So only, again, if you have something brand new to add to the conversation, let's use the Zoom raise of hand. Let's go next to Alvin. Go ahead.
Well, I would have to disagree with you. I think instantly that Robinson, London, and Kyle Pitts, people are going to draft them. I could tell you, I have, and even Kirk Cousins, because first of all, Arthur Blank, I know this had to have been an owner situation. The GMs probably didn't want to bring Kirk Cousins in, so this was a owner pulled this shot. He took this shot and he wanted Kirk Cousins there. He wanted a proven veteran. And I think they did the due diligence to make sure that he would be healthy with that Achilles. And I just think with him being in Atlanta, he's going to go up in this draft. He's projected to be 15th by ESPN fantasy rankings. And I think he can move up 5 rankings just from being in Atlanta with the nucleus of Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. And I would definitely move Kyle Pitts up at least 3 spots from 12th in the ESPN rankings.
Okay.
I don't see Robinson going up any further.
Yeah, Robinson's already up
going
there
any
pretty
further.
high.
I can see him staying where he is because I can't see moving up past McCaffrey, the other gentleman from.
So Kirk Cousins is clearly not being drafted as a fantasy starter right now. I think there are clearly 12 better quarterbacks than him. We're going to do a whole episode this week on specifically free agency and how it impacts the quarterbacks and the rankings. I don't see
The reason why I say that because he's
you
automatically going to be
his numbers at
number
his
one quarterback in the NFC South.
His peak Cousins' peak numbers with Minnesota. He had Justin Jefferson. It's not going to be that good again, in my opinion. And to look at Drake London, here's my problem with what you're saying, Alvin. It's all theory. It sounds good in theory that the coaches held back those players and they should be better now. But if you're drafting your team and your players on theory, you're gambling, and there's a huge. It's not actually proven. Every player who's on the board here. Let's look at where Drake London is going, right? So Drake London is going, as if he's going to be a top receiver, right? Here he is, 35 overall in the ADP. Devonta Smith has 2 years running as a stud. Keenan Allen has a career. Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Amari, all these guys are proven. You're thinking Drake's going to jump into that pile, into that category. And he might or he might not, but that risk is what you want to eliminate in a fantasy football draft. Let's go. I want to make sure we have time to hear from everyone, and we're going to circle back and go to what happens to Minnesota next. Kyle Pitts, by the way, if you haven't learned your lesson with Kyle Pitts yet, you're crazy to draft him. Yeah, and if these guys were that good, their old coaching staff would have been playing them.
But that's the thing. I also think that that's part of the reason they brought him in, to get Kyle Pitts into the mix. So I think that's why I think that this is not a bad choice. I think that they're really working hard to get Kyle Pitts, because right now he's just, it's ridiculous. So I that's what I think. That's how I feel. I don't know how you guys feel.
Well, no, we agree that that's what they brought him in for, to try to get these guys going. But what we're saying is that Cousins has a lot of question marks in his age and his health. And then on top of that, these players have a lot of question marks. And they can't all suddenly supercharge. That would be highly unlikely that this team turns into, the Rams with, Marshall Faulk and Kurt Warner that just got better overnight. If, for example, Cousins comes in and they start throwing more, then Bijan's numbers are going to go down. If they should just grind Bijan. Everyone who's taking Bijan is going in the first round as the 3rd overall pick. If we're going to start to run Bijan more, then that's going to impact. This is going to be more of a run first team. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of guessing going into this. Jeremiah, you have your hand up. Did you have something else to add to this as we circle back? You're on mute now.
Yeah, we really haven't talked about what Minnesota's going to do at quarterback.
Yeah, let's
now.
go
The
there
draft-
next. So let's pre-frame that, and we'll start you up with Minnesota. So Minnesota, I cannot believe that Minnesota let Cousins go. I mean, this leaves them in rebuild mode, or in what? Like, what is Minnesota going to do? And I thought they would have Russell Wilson as their backup plan, and he's gone now too. Like, Minnesota is looking like a mess, a mismanaged team. I don't know if they've signed someone. I tuned off about 4 or 5 hours ago, so maybe something new has come down. But what the heck is Minnesota going to do? But I will say this: I do agree with Minnesota not giving a 4-year, $100 million deal to a guy who's 35 years old. Cousins might be good this year. At 39, come on, guys! People just don't play at 39 unless they're the go. So I get the dollars and cents might have just got too rich for Minnesota. I think they blew it with Russell Wilson. What are they going to do? And the last thing I want to add is one thing with Kirk Cousins is he has always, whoever his number 2 receiver is, has always done well. It was Adam Thielen for a while. Last year they had Addison in there, the rookie. So this is something I do want to encourage you to look into in Atlanta for who is going to develop as the number 2 receiver there. And that person is not somebody who's being drafted hardly at all, and a good sleeper to put on your list. Going back to Atlanta, but we're done with Atlanta. Let's go into Minnesota. We'll start with Jeremiah, and then we'll go to Will. Jeremiah, what is Minnesota going to do now?
Well, they're going to have to draft a quarterback, and the draft should be interesting now, especially with Denver picking right behind them at 12. You may see some trades right in that area. Denver may want to jump up, knowing how Peyton is, jump up ahead of them, try to get their guy. I think whether it be Penix, Bo Nix, someone like J.J. McCarthy falling to them, you got a pretty decent offensive line. You got 2 studs, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and a great tight end, T.J. Hawkinson. A rookie's going to step right in and have some good weapons in a division that could be winnable.
Yeah, I think you're right on. What's left for them now besides the draft? I don't see Justin Fields. The Bears are not going to trade him in the division. That'd be suicide.
No way. No way.
Exactly. Will, what do you see as far as Minnesota and their fantasy players?
Like Joshua Dobbs is on that team, right?
Yeah, I mean, they benched him last year. He couldn't run the team last year, but he is on that team. I mean, and I know you know him from Cleveland. Is he somebody you think can lead a team?
I mean, I don't know what they're expecting, like he was at Carolina for a little bit, and I think he did okay there. Or not Carolina, the Cardinals for a little bit last year. He kind of had a crazy year last year, but my question is with Jefferson, like, is he going to stay now or is he gone? I think that's kind of the main question, and there might be an update on that. But
yeah, well, Jefferson is under contract for this year, so he's definitely going to be there. I'm just skimming through this. This is not anything.
It's hard to keep up with
excitement.
Everything, man. There was so much that happened today.
Yeah, that's why we're checking this team to team as we go. So it looks like Minnesota's options at this point are to draft a rookie. Maybe they're in love with one of the rookies, and that's why they did this, right? I hate to think that they are behind all of this and in a mess. You like to think they have a plan. They know what they're doing. I hear some talk that they're in love with J.J. McCarthy. Fine. If you're going to bring in a rookie quarterback, I discount everybody that's on that team. The most rookie quarterbacks struggle. Don't think, who's going to be this year? CJ Stroud. That's like a once in a lifetime thing. And I love it. Perfect timing as David is joining here. We got to hear from David in Houston in a little bit. What the heck is Houston going to do at running back? That's on our list of things to talk about here today. But right now, we're covering Minnesota. Where do we draft the Minnesota players now that it looks like they're going to either have Dobbs or bring in a rookie and maybe go with Dobbs, maybe sign another veteran and draft a rookie? Lisa, what's your take on Minnesota, and how does this impact their fantasy players?
Well, I don't play a lot of fantasy, so let me just put that up there. So a lot of times when my takes aren't fantasy takes, they're just regular takes, so my apologies. So I know that Danielle Hunter is a free agent, but they're trying to get Well, they were trying to get Snead. I think that they got somebody else, didn't they? Instead, so I was looking at it from a Kansas City point of view, and they were trying to get our cornerback, L'Jarius Sneed, but I think that they actually got someone else instead. I have to
Yeah, we
look at
just
that.
skimmed all their players that they have. There was no one of name, and we want to stay
Okay.
focused on offense here today. We're not going to be talking about defensive players
Okay.
in today's show. So Minnesota, if they're going to bring in a rookie quarterback, which is what it looks like right now, or a journeyman quarterback, you cannot take Justin Jefferson anymore. Where he's been, you've got to move him down a few spots in the draft. Let's just look at where that is. Here's where he's going overall ADP. He's been going at number 4 overall. I already think he's coming off a big injury. He's a little bit disgruntled there. Addison is there. Addison, had a great year last year, 10 touchdowns when Jefferson was gone for the most part. He's when he scored most of his. So already there's things cutting into Jefferson's numbers. I move him down significantly behind Jamar Chase, behind St. Brown. Running backs to receivers is hard to compare, but you got to drop wherever you had Jefferson before. He's got to move down a few notches. He's lost his security blanket, his quarterback. The system they were in was built around Cousins. If they bring in Dobbs, he runs a lot. If they bring in McCarthy, he is going to need to running back. And speaking of running back, Minnesota does not have a NFL caliber running back. Ty Chandler is not going to be there through a whole season. I think Minnesota really needs to step up and sign maybe Derrick Henry. They need something to make up for the loss of Cousins. They need a running back. If you're going to have a rookie quarterback, you want a running back to feature. I don't know why Derrick Henry would want to go there. He wants to win now, but if his options are limited, this could be a place where he could go. So I look for Minnesota to sign a running back. Do not take Chandler in a late round flyer. He's not likely to be the starter. I look to move Jefferson down. I don't draft their quarterback unless you're like at the end and you're desperate for a quarterback. And Addison, I feel, is being taken way too high. Addison had an amazing rookie year because Jefferson was out and he was the number 1 go-to for that 8 weeks. Now he's going back to his place as the number 2 guy. His stats are not going to get better on what he was doing before. If anything, they're going to stay the same or drop down because the quarterback is worse and the Jefferson is back. So I'm staying away from Addison in this draft as well. That's what I'm seeing with Minnesota. All right, let's hop into some of the hometown takes. We covered the most important, the biggest one was Kirk Cousins and where that leaves things. Let's go around the horn and we'll start with Alvin on Dallas. What is Dallas doing in free agency and what can we expect to see them do next?
Well, I can concur with the information that David has put out there. Derrick Henry has bought a house without saying it. He is saying it. I think he's going to be picked up by the Cowboys. Another surprise that we may wind up getting Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones in free agency. There's a possibility there. Also, we will be looking into the draft, looking at Jonathan Brooks from the University of Texas and Trey Benson from FSU. Some rookies that we'll bring in through the draft. But we're definitely looking to replace those running backs. And I believe that we have one of our running backs either be announced tonight or tomorrow, possibly, that Derrick Henry will be a Dallas Cowboy.
So what's their salary cap situation? Are they at or near the cap? Is that why we're not hearing much from them today?
Yeah, we're at or near the cap. We haven't made any moves or sales right now in free agency. I know they're going to have to move Michael Gallup because there's a lot of money tied up in his contract, but he's going to have to be a trade situation. They're not going to be able to just cut his money. It's going to cost too much against the cap. I think they're trying to figure out how they can make that move and do the talks they would need to do for draft night to get rid of Michael Gallup's contract.
Yeah, that would free up some space. I don't know if anybody would take him with that contract, though. I think you might just have to cut him, and hopefully you can save some money. Do they have the money to get Derrick Henry is the big question. I mean, he's gonna have to take a significant pay cut to come. And then that leaves even less money for Aaron Jones. To me, if Dallas does not sign a veteran, that is a full-blown statement that they are drafting a running back. Right? They have to get a running back one way or the
Well,
other.
I can tell you they are signing a veteran. They're already making phone calls as we speak. I know for sure to Aaron Jones. Um, I know for sure they're making those phone calls, especially with Jacobs replacing him. I can't see how Green Bay can keep Jacobs and Aaron Jones because
Jones has been cut.
Yeah, there's no way.
All right. All right. Will, what's your take on the Dallas situation?
Oh, I thought we were doing home teams.
No, we're going to go around on Dallas and then we'll do home team. So we'll come back to you with Cleveland.
They cut Pollard, right? That was
They
kind of
cut Pollard. Pollard signed with Tennessee. I don't know how that helps Tennessee. The money they used on Pollard, they might as well just have paid Derrick Henry. I guess Henry wanted out. And they wanted to do right by him. But Pollard, you know, I don't see Pollard being a guy you want to draft in Tennessee. They have Ty Spears. I don't know why they aren't just going with Spears. I thought he looked pretty good last year. I was surprised they signed Pollard. I don't know how much they spent on him. I don't see any of those guys being guys you want on your fantasy team unless you're desperate. Jordan, we're staying on the Cowboys. What's your take on the Cowboys free agency and fantasy football?
Well, first I want to say good afternoon, and it's always a great day to talk about the Cowboys, America's team. Anyways, about the Cowboy situation. Honestly, I'm honestly was like very shocked when I saw Aaron Jones got released, and I'm just saying, and like the first thing I thought when Aaron Jones got released, I know they're trying to get Derrick Henry, but get Aaron Jones. Like Aaron Jones was a Cowboys killer every time Green Bay played played the Cowboys. He was always a Cowboy killer. He's probably mad that he didn't get picked up by the Cowboys. I wouldn't be surprised. He'd be like, "F the Cowboys, I'm going to Houston." But like, no, we need Aaron Jones, like him as a player. I feel like Derrick Henry is more of a power back. And I feel like for Dak, what would be more successful is a guy who can run the ball, but then also catch the ball and be more involved in the offense. And I think that's going to be best for somebody like Dak Prescott.
Well, what makes you think Aaron Jones has anything left in the tank? At 30, most running backs hit the wall. This is when Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlin, and Jones is not in the category of those guys at all. If you look at what Jones did last year, he missed about half the season. And his numbers were at a career low. I mean, that's why Green Bay's given up on the guy. What makes you think he's going to be healthy and productive in the answer for Dallas?
Well, let's be honest. Like Derrick Henry has been injury prone and everything, and he has so many more miles on him too. So it's
I mean,
yes,
just because it's not like one is better than the other, right?
Yeah,
They might both be. Why do you want either of these guys? You know, why do you want either of these aging veterans? I'm surprised they didn't throw any money at Barkley, but I guess Philly, made the price too steep there. All right, let's hear next from Jeremiah on Dallas.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do with their second receiver. Brandon Cooks really didn't pan out. Michael Gallup's never panned out. He's had 2 good games, and they act like he's going to be the next big thing. I just wonder what they're going to do at second receiver there.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. No one seems to have been able to produce in that role. That could just be the nature of the role. I mean, Cooks is a proven solid veteran. So for Cooks to not put up numbers, to me, that just says that they want to feature CeeDee Lamb, and Dak's going to look for CeeDee or Ant Lamb, and rightfully so. Lamb delivered the ball. So the second receiver is kind of maybe just a decoy there. I thought Tolbert was decent, better than Cooks or anybody else they had, and he's already on the roster. So maybe they bring somebody in there. Looking ahead to Dallas's draft, to me, if I'm running Dallas, you don't want an old running back that's not going to be there in the playoffs. Your goal, you're not playing for the regular season, Cowboys fans. You're playing for the Super Bowl. You can't put your money into a guy that may not be there who's going to break down. Derrick Henry is a high impact runner. He's due to break down. 2 years ago, he was pretty broken down by the playoffs, and Tennessee fell out. And Jones, the same thing. So the guy that I'm hearing Dallas is targeting in the draft is Jonathan Brooks. I've been grabbing a lot of him. If you're drafting right now, I feel like this is a lottery ticket waiting to go off. And the fact that Dallas hasn't brought in a veteran yet makes this guy more valuable than ever. He's from the University of Texas, was having a great year last year until November. He tore his ACL. And the tidbit I heard that not a lot of people have heard is that he did his surgery with the Cowboys team doctors at their facility. So they know better than anyone in the world what is his health. Is this a guy that we want? And if we don't see them signing a Henry or a Jones, to me, that's a signal that they have decided that this is their guy, Jonathan Brooks. Now, and I love Brooks from what I saw with him at University of Texas. If you watched them beat Alabama last year, Brooks was a big part of that game. They weren't as good down the stretch. They lost to Oklahoma. They lost in the playoff game to Washington. They weren't nearly as good once they lost Brooks, and that was a high-powered offense that he was a part of at Texas last year. So I love Brooks no matter where he goes. The ACL injury was in November, but here's the thing. Every mock draft I've seen has Brooks going as a high to mid second round pick. Now, Dallas has a late second round pick. So, and I feel like if Dallas is going to get this guy, you're going to have to step up and use your first round pick on him because everyone's kind of knows that you want him. And so, like, if you don't take him, he's not just going to fall to you in the second or third round. If you think he's the guy, you got to step up and take him with your first round pick. And so that's what I expect to see happening with Dallas. Otherwise, I still love CeeDee Lamb and love Dak. No matter who's running back there, the worse the running game is, the better it is for the passing game. So to me, this makes CeeDee Lamb even more valuable, Dak even more valuable. And I'm very high on both of them for fantasy football drafting right now, based on what we've seen so far. Jordan, did you have something else to add on that?
Yeah, like you said, he was talking about like all the other guys, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Diggs, and all that stuff. The problem I have with Dallas, and it's like I do not know what they're going to do this year, is the issue is they're going to have to end up paying these guys. They're going to have to end up paying these guys, and I would not be surprised that this may be because like Dak Prescott, he has 2 more years in his contract, but only 1 year is guaranteed. I would not be surprised this may be his last year if he do not win in the playoffs. Like, that's the thing, because, like, money's tight.
Yeah, I get for this year, everybody's locked in. This is a push your chips to the table, win now type of mentality in Dallas. Clearly, the coaching staff, all their jobs, McCarthy's gone if they don't make the Super Bowl this year. So they're going to be pushing all their chips in. To me, that's probably a signal to go with a veteran, to bring in Derrick Henry, to bring in anybody you can. The salary cap, you can always figure out the salary cap. Like there's always ways to extend people out, kick the can forward, as they call it, to extend people's contracts and find a way to make things work. All right, so we've covered Dallas. We've covered Minnesota and Atlanta so far. Let's go next to David, joining us from Houston. Tell us, what is Houston doing in free agency? They have a lot of money. Singletary's gone. I liked him. I thought they'd bring him back on the cheap. The Giants gave him a decent offer, so clearly they have their eye on somebody better. What are they doing, and what do they need to do, David?
Yeah, for sure. So I was a little shocked by the Singletary thing also. I thought for sure, I thought, he's the perfect number 2 running back. So see him leave that, not that big of a deal. We lost a lot of we lost our 2 of our best defensive players in Jonathan Grenard to Minnesota. and Blake Cashman also to Minnesota. So that defense up there is gonna be much better. The thing with our GMs, he understands that you don't win the Super Bowl with free agency. He ran New England forever, so he knows how to go, dumpster diving, how to get the bargain bin deals. Ever since he got here back in 2020, he's always signed people to prove it deals, 1 year, 2 year. We did get Azeez Al-Shaair, so I'm excited about that. That'll be good getting him back with D'Amico Ryans. He was awesome in San Fran. He was jumping off the screen in Tennessee last year. So yeah, it'll be little signings, just depth signings here and there. We got like Jeff Okudah and Lonnie Johnson Jr., who, if they work out, great. If not, we have somebody in case Derek Stingley goes down, if we don't get Steven Nelson. But we just build through the draft. So we'll go defense in the first round. It'll be interesting now to see if we go defensive end. Eric Armstead's also out there. I know D'Amico Ryans loved working with him in San Francisco. So I imagine the Texans will go after him. But most importantly, thank God we did not sign Saquon Barkley. Oh my God, I was sweating. They said it came down to the Texans, the Bears, and the Eagles. The Bears eliminated themselves early with DeAndre Swift. I think that'll be a good signing if they get Caleb Williams. But yeah, I did not want Saquon
because of the injury history.
Yeah, the legs, especially with a running back, it's too much.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Saquon is always hurt. He's on my do not draft list for fantasy. Going to Philadelphia, by the way, for fantasy. And I want to keep today's conversation focused on offense and fantasy. But Saquon going to Philly is not good for him either. Jalen Hurts doesn't dump the ball off to running backs. We saw that with Swift they had last year. Jalen Hurts, when he's flushed out, runs. He's a running quarterback. He is not a quarterback who throws the ball to receivers, which is half of the value and awesomeness of what Barkley brings that is going to be lost. Also, no goal line carries for Barkley. They use the tush push down there. So this is, to me, the kiss of death for Barkley. On top of his injury history, he's getting older. Now he's in a situation where I see his touches going down across the board. And so I would not draft him at all. He was already going in the 3rd round in fantasy. I wouldn't draft him at all, no matter where he fell to me. There's no point where where it's worth having a broken player on your team. Jeremiah, what did you have to add on this? We're talking about Houston.
I was going with the Saquon Barkley portion. I don't know.
Let's just finish on Houston. I want to finish a few things before we can do Philly next, but let's finish on Houston. Yeah, we got so because the rumors were Houston in the market for a running back, right? Saquon. So then we just look at the list of what the running backs are that are out there. You got Saquon, you got Derrick Henry. People that don't really know things think, oh, well, Tennessee's in our division or weaken them. I'm like, they already suck. You don't need to weaken them. And you got a nice young team. How does bringing in this older guy fit there? You do need a running back though. So of who's available, who would be on your wish list at this point?
So of the running backs available, I don't really have a wish list. I think the plan's always been kind of to draft a running back. If we bring somebody in, it'll be someone to be our number 2 running back. We kind of talked about Dameon Pierce last week. I think this kind of gives him a little bit of life because you asked me. I said I would be surprised if he's on the team come September. But I think they planned on keeping Singletary. So at this point, it really just depends on if we can get that number 2 running back in the bargain bin. But
you said I thought it was a really good insight that you had that no one else outside of the city would know about Dameon Pierce, because he's on a lot of people's sleeper lists after seeing a good rookie year. Maybe he bounces back this year. But tell us again why you don't think Pierce is a good fit with this team.
Yeah, so that first year that he was on the team, we had Lovie Smith as the head coach. So our offensive coordinator was Pep Hamilton, and they didn't run the zone offense. It was more of a down blocking scheme. With the zone offense, it's predicated on finding, this is the lane, but there's always supposed to be a cutback, and he can never make that decision. So he would just, be like a deer in the headlights, and we, maybe 1 yard, maybe a loss of yardage, but it was just bad anytime he got the ball. I think he maybe had 2 or 3 touchdowns last year. He had, he ate the year before his rookie season, so it'll be interesting maybe if he bounces back. But based off of what I saw last year, I don't think so. At the end of the season, he was relegated to being the kick returner, and even that ended badly for him. So yeah, I think like a Blake Corum, if Jonathan Brooks is there, Trey Benson, those would be running backs I would go after 3rd round at the absolute earliest.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Although I think all 3 of those guys are 2nd round picks, but there's a lot of good running backs out there beyond that as well. It's kind of like buying a lottery ticket with running backs that aren't blue chip caliber like this, but they are going to need a veteran, even if they do draft a rookie. There's a guy that comes to mind who would be on my wish list. And if you're drafting right now, like I am, these are the kind of guys you want to look for. They're guys that other people are not taking because they're not really on a team right now. And people have kind of forgotten about them. So I like Zach Moss as a great fit for Houston, or a great fit somewhere. The Raiders still need a running back. I'm not sold on Zamir White. Again, most teams need 2 good running backs. Zach Moss put up great numbers on Indy last year when Jonathan Taylor was out. Even still kind of continued to produce when Taylor came back. And so he's proven that he can be productive when given a chance. I think he would come on the cheap. He'd be a great veteran to bring in and draft a rookie. And now, and you got kind of a nice timeshare here. And it's tempting to think in fantasy, oh, I don't want a timeshare, but that's almost unrealistic in today's NFL. And it usually leads to injury prone. It's very rare. And you do see there's guys like Rashid White of my Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. There was no other timeshare. He was on the field for all 3 downs, but that was because everybody else in Tampa sucked. It wasn't because he was so great. I expect Tampa to bring in a veteran this year. I don't like Rashid White's numbers to go up or get any better. I think they'll go down. Mostly his numbers were because of usage, not so much because he's was his top 5 like his numbers were. What do you think about Zach, David? You obviously got to see him. He's in a rival.
Yeah, so we saw him in the first game of the season. He did well against us, but he was also playing with Anthony Richardson that first half. So really, we only saw him for half a game compared to Jonathan Taylor. The last game of the season, we played him. But Zach Moss played for Buffalo prior to last year. He was in Buffalo, and he never really jumped off the screen for me. But yeah, you're right. We do need a veteran running back. So whomever it is, we just need somebody to go in and make sure, they can pick up a few yards here and there, give our whoever our starter is, that opportunity to just catch their breath and not fumble the ball. That's the most important thing. And that was a Dameon Pierce problem, is fumbling the ball.
Yeah, it's another knock on Pierce in case he's still on your sleeper list. But I feel like Zach Moss never really got a chance in Buffalo. He was behind Devin Singletary. Then he was behind James Cook. They never really gave him the chance. Indy gave him the chance, and he was productive last year. So if you're kind of looking at who's left out there because you want to bring in a veteran, I think he's the best of what's left for some of these teams to be considering, and that he's worth taking in the late rounds of a fantasy football draft as a flyer. Best ball, again, is 20 rounds, so you need these type of guys at the end. When everybody else is taking guys that have no upside, they're just like handcuffs. Oh, if McCaffrey gets hurt, this guy could play. That it's much better to at least get somebody like a Zach Moss who's going to be in a timeshare. All right, let's move on from Houston. We'll go to Will. You want to talk Cleveland, Will? What's Cleveland doing in free agency?
Yeah, I was going to say Houston got one of my favorite cornerbacks from Cleveland.
We're just talking offense today.
It's no fun. I know. Offense, we signed our D-line. We lost our linebackers. I like how we signed the D-line. We lost.
Still not talking offense.
I'm sorry, offense. I need to rephrase it. We signed a guy named Jerry Jeudy, which was kind of the big offensive move. I didn't really know any of the offensive stuff we did. That was a big move, though.
They traded for Jeudy. I don't think they had a lot of money under the cap.
So,
they traded for Jeudy. Flacco is a free agent. He says he wants to come back to Cleveland. I think it'd be smart for him to come back to Cleveland. The rumor has it New England's offering him the starting job as a transition quarterback. We'll see if that, to me, when New England when word gets out about something New England might do like that, to me, that's a smokescreen, and not true. Anything, you hear from New England, especially under Belichick, and these guys that are coaching them now, Gerard Mayo, are groomed by Belichick. Like, it's always the opposite of what they actually do, because they don't want to lose leverage in the situation.
Yeah. So
So
2 5th-rounders for two 5th-rounders for 2 number 1 and number 2 receivers. That's what matters.
Judy,
That's a pretty big deal. And we got Cooper for a 5th-rounder too.
who's the other receiver?
We got Amari Cooper a few years ago for a
Oh,
5th
Amari
rounder,
Cooper, right,
so
right. That deal
I
was
love that setup, man.
Yeah, Okay, so let's break down Cleveland from a fantasy perspective, while we're on the topic here. And one of the biggest questions is going to be around their running back, and we'll circle back to Will on that. I want to get your take if you're hearing anything locally there about what the running back situation is with Nick Chubb. But first, let's talk about the passing game. I love Amari Cooper. He's been a go-to guy for me as a second wide receiver. Great 3rd-round pick for me last year. He's going 3rd and 4th-round pick this year. He is getting older. He's 30. It's his best numbers seem to come when Deshaun is not out there. Deshaun Watson's not out there. They don't seem to have great chemistry. And now with Judy coming, there's another guy to cut into Amari's numbers. So I'm slightly down on Amari Cooper for all those reasons. I move him below guys that he's getting drafted after, if we're looking into the wide receiver draft now. There's a lot of young guys with upside that are in that same range. I no longer consider Amari the best guy. Guys, people that are drafting fantasy football based on last year's stats will take Amari too high. Zay Flowers looks like an emerging star. Yeah, look how great he did in the NFL playoffs. By the way, one of the best ways to find players that are going to do better next year is to look at what they did in the playoffs. Zay Flowers was scoring. He was the go-to guy there, right? Love him. Love Jaden Reed. McLaurin should get a better quarterback in Washington. I like all these guys better than Amari Cooper. Jerry Jeudy, I'm high on. I think that he deserves a late. I mean, look where he's being picked, way down here, because people didn't know where he was. He thought he was in Denver.
He was the top 20 guy, his rookie year. He was top 20. So he's had some potential. One year
he had the one good year there.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago. And last year was just a disaster in Denver. And so I don't blame Judy for that. I think Judy will bounce back and will be a solid pick. He's a good late round receiver to take with some upside. If Cooper gets hurt, Judy could become the guy. So I like Judy there. David Njoku, the tight end, I also like him there. Let's talk about the Cleveland running back situation just real quick. It's not free agency impacted, but I think it merits conversation. What do you expect to see happen at running back, Will?
I was hearing Pollard rumors for a while. So
Pollard's gone. He signed.
I know he signed. I was hearing that a little bit. So they might want to upgrade. I haven't heard a whole lot though. I mean, they're going to do something with Nick Chubb's contract. The salary cap.
Is Nick Chubb healthy? That's where it all starts to me. Is Nick Chubb?
He'll be fine. He's dealt with this before, but yeah,
that's different. Now he's 30. He's already at the end. Like stats, you can't just assume that. He was hurt in college. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so to expect Chubb to come back at age 30 is completely different.
If it was up to me, I would get rid of him.
Well,
I don't think they're going to.
Jerome Ford was very productive. He was a guy that really carried my team and filled in for me nicely last year. He had 9 touchdowns, close to 1,000 yards combined receiving and rushing. He can catch the ball. I like Jerome Ford a lot.
I think him and Hunt were good enough, honestly. Him and Hunt were a great combo.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt seems like everybody's cast him off. Like his fantasy relevance wasn't, he wasn't a player worth starting in fantasy, but he would get the goal line carries.
Exactly.
He was the bigger pounder back. I would look for this right now. Here's what I think is the best likely scenario. Kareem Hunt is gone. Chubb comes back at a lesser price and is in a split with Jerome Ford. Thus Chubb's numbers are not going back to where they were before, 1,500 yards. I mean, that was just a career year for him. He'd never done that before that either. And so it's nowhere near going back to that. I would stay away from Chubb at 30. We don't know if he's coming back. We don't know if he'll get hurt again. We don't know how they're going to use him. I would completely stay away from him. And even with Chubb stealing a lot of the goal line carries, I like Jerome Ford a lot as a fantasy sleeper in PPR leagues where you get
Njoku's the only guy I'm drafting. If you need to draft a Brown, draft Njoku.
And Njoku is, he's had the one good year. And I think he's a solid tight end. So let's move on and let's go talk about Kansas City with Lisa. Lisa, what is Kansas City doing in free agency? Obviously, Chris Jones re-signed, right? That's the most important news. Let's talk offense here. What's going on with Kansas City and offense?
We haven't done really a lot in offense. Everybody's kind of waiting. We're trying to figure out what's going on as we watch everybody go off the board. We know we need a wide receiver. We're looking for, Chiefs Kingdom. I don't know what Brett Veach is looking for, but Chiefs Kingdom is looking for a veteran wide receiver, because when we bring in rookie wide receivers, they typically don't play a lot and play well in Andy Reid's offense initially. So
all right, well, let's dissect that. Let's dissect that statement to begin with. And then I want to look at Kansas City's money, because I don't think they have money to bring anyone in.
Oh, they will.
I know the public would love Calvin Ridley to go there. And I get maybe Kansas City's trying to talk Ridley into, hey, you want to win a ring? Ridley's turning 30. There's a lot of people talk shit about Ridley, but that he had a bad year in Jacksonville, but he actually had a solid fantasy year in last year. So his numbers were not down. Jacksonville still wants him back, but that doesn't seem to make sense since they signed Gabe Davis,
right,
which was like, you don't want him.
I'm glad they signed Gabe Davis, because a lot of people were talking about Gabe Davis for Kansas City. So I'm glad they signed him.
Oh, Gabe Davis. And I mean, here, one thing about Davis is maybe he just needs a chance to be the guy. Maybe he was always behind Diggs and didn't get thrown to enough, and that's why he was so inconsistent. The knock on Davis is he'll have like 2 touchdowns and 100 yards one week, and then literally a 0 the next week. He had no consistency, but maybe that's just how Buffalo used him, and he's maybe worth a late round pick in fantasy, like where he's going now in ADP. Let's just look at the ADP here. I've been taking him, but I suspect people are going to start reaching up on him now that he's in Jacksonville. If you look at Gabe Davis, he's at about 139 in right here, right? So among these guys, like these are the guys that are not proven at all, but have upsides. Guys like Judy. I like Dotson actually as well. And this cast of guys, these are all good picks. But now with Davis going to Jacksonville, he's going to move way up on the charts. So back to Kansas City then. So they don't have money to really sign somebody unless they cut somebody or rework somebody's deal.
Yeah, I think they're planning on reworking Patrick Mahomes' deal. I think they're planning on working right guard Joe Tooney's deal, and there's another deal I think they're planning on reworking. So it won't be a problem. Also, we have L'Jarius Sneed. We think we're going to trade him, but it looks like I don't know, because I know that I can't remember who it was. They were really interested in him, and they just took somebody. Who was it?
Yeah, I want to stay on offense anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
Offense.
So let's unpack your statement about receivers take time to learn Andy Reid's system, because I've heard people say this before, and I believed it before, but now I think it's myth. And so I want to hear your side of this. Here's my side of this. Rashee Rice was a rookie and did great. In the beginning of the year, maybe they didn't even throw to him enough. But as soon as you started throwing to him, he did great. The guys that came before him, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson, they just suck. Moore just can't play. It's not like it's taking him time to learn. No. It sucks.
I disagree with that. Rashee Rice, he did spend a lot of extra time. He worked with Mahomes. I mean, he really took the time to get in there, and he was an anomaly. And it was really kind of a surprise, because when he wasn't in there initially, everybody's like, get Rashee in there. And then we're like, okay, we do understand. most of the time when a rookie comes into Andy Reid's system, he does not play a lot in the first year because it takes.
Give me your evidence of a rookie that came in that did not play a lot, but then developed into being a good player.
Tyreek, Nicole, Byron Pringle.
Cole Hardman is not good.
but he did not play his first year. I mean, that's what I'm saying. None
That's
of us
he
played.
sucks.
No. He doesn't suck. He just has a particular set of skills.
And Tyreek, came from a small school and needed to develop. I mean, I think this is a bad rap. And here's where I'm going with this. If you guys draft a receiver in the first or second round, even the third round, he's on my list of players I want in fantasy. I'm not buying this crap that he's going to take a year to develop. I think that's not true all the time. It's true sometimes, not all the time. And if you take a player high, first, second, or third round, there's this pressure to play them because you want to get some return on your investment.
Right. That is true. But if you want to pick them in fantasy, you go ahead. You have been warned. I'm just telling you.
Who is the guy that you like them to draft in fantasy?
In fantasy?
No, I'm sorry, in the real draft, the receiver you told me about.
I honestly, I am not great with picking people. I pick people and they don't really turn out that great. So I typically just kind of rely on them. Like I said, a lot of people have been talking about Worthy. A lot of people have been talking about Adnai, what was his name? Mitchell.
Yeah,
and then
Mitchell. I thought you said Lad McConkey was
and then McConkey. They've been talking about them. So those are the three that have been floating around the kingdom. I don't know what they're actually doing in the building, but that's what's been floating around the kingdom. So we're looking for those as far as a veteran, which we think we do need in that, like I said, because rookies really don't play. So everybody's going off the board.
One of those three guys, they're going to play this year.
We'll see. It'll take a little while for them to get into the system, just like Rashee. If they do play, it's going to take them a little while. So I mean, we've been talking about Calvin Ridley. We've been talking about Hollywood Brown. A lot of people now are kind of off of Hollywood Brown because of his size. So I think we just have to wait and see what happens. We do have to make sure we're under the cap. So I think that has a lot to do with why, we're kind of waiting. We made some moves on defense, but nothing yet on offense. So we're kind of waiting. And we're also waiting to see what's going to happen with our running backs too, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a free agent. McKinnon is a free agent now. All we've got is Pacheco. So what are we going to do with that? Are we going to have are we going to find somebody in free agency, which I really seriously doubt. So I think we'll go in the draft because our running backs in the draft typically do kind of start out and they work in our system relatively quickly.
Yeah. So Hollywood Brown, to me, he's his career, he's been a possession receiver. I could see him playing the Juju Smith-Schuster role for Kansas City. And if you remember Juju, he was barely worth starting in fantasy, even though Mahomes threw him a lot of balls. He'd get a lot of catches, but not a lot of touchdowns, not a lot of yards. That's who Hollywood Brown would be. So I don't recommend Hollywood Brown as a sleeper if you're betting on players now that might go to Kansas City. He could go to Kansas City on the cheap. I like Lad McConkey. And the other guys, A.D. Mitchell's everybody's fighting for.
Yeah.
You'll have to trade up in the first round to get him. I think you take defense in the first round. Xavier Worthy is just fast. He's a very risky pick. It wouldn't be smart for them to take him in the first round. He reminds me of the kind of guys the Raiders would take.
And we're tired of kind of getting the little guys. He's very thin. We're tired of getting the little guys. We want somebody with muscle who can actually go up and and get those contested catches. So that's that's what I've been waiting for, and I hope that's what they've kind of been kind of going towards, that type of person prototype as opposed to the smaller guys that we had prior. So I'm hoping that we get somebody with some substance so they can go up and get some contested catches, because we need that desperately.
And right now, Pacheco is the only guy in the backfield.
Yes.
He can catch the ball, right? Can he catch the ball?
He can catch the ball. He's proven to catch the ball. He didn't do much his first year, but last year he did that a lot.
They took him out on third downs. They put in McKinnon and Helaire on third downs. So,
That's
but
true.
if those guys are gone, if Pacheco stays in on third downs, he could get a lot more catches. His stats could be going up. He's a guy for me to keep an eye on in fantasy this year,
He
Pacheco.
he runs really hard, so be careful because I know he's had some shoulder issues and he had surgery already. So
Yeah,
I think that's
that's
why
a
they're trying.
risk.
Yeah.
So they probably do need to bring somebody else in just to balance the workload. Alvin, did you have something to add to that? If not, we're going to keep going around here. We're on KC now, Alvin.
Yeah, yeah. Just looking at KC, this is statistically their worst offensive season in the last 5 seasons. Going forward with fantasy, if they don't address these issues, I don't see why, other than the usual Kelsey and Mahomes, would you even want to draft any skill position offensively in Kansas City, because they only averaged 21 points last season.
Well, let me say something quickly. Um, this quest for a three-peat is real. I mean, they have bought in. That's why Chris Jones is now the highest paid defensive tackle in the history of the NFL, on average, because they have really bought in. So don't think that this year is going to be like last year. I don't know what they're going to do, but Veach is going to do something, and they're going to make it easier on Mahomes. So if you don't want to pick Mahomes for fantasy, that's your prerogative. But I can honestly tell you 100%, I am 100% sure that last year will not be like this, or this year will not be like last year. So they're going to make it a lot easier on Mahomes, and they're going for that three-peat.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole, we'll go more under the hood in the veteran players. I want to stay on free agency here, but it's a big question. Do you take Kelsey or not? Do you take Mahomes or not? If you look at last year's stats, they were a fantasy bust
Yep.
last year, the biggest bust of all fantasy last year. So it is something you need to look under the hood at, and we're going to go deep into that in one of our other episodes. Hey, let's hop over to the chat right now on YouTube and just see what people are saying there. And let's have everyone put in here, what's been your biggest surprise of today? The biggest surprise signing. Go ahead and let's have everyone put that into YouTube. And let's make sure that everyone who's here on Zoom is on YouTube. We need everyone participating over in YouTube. We're trying to drive up the engagement there. So I'll put the link there in case you need it. And let's hop over and just see what people are saying in the chat. For me, the biggest surprise was Barkley. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Jacobs yet. Barkley to the Eagles really surprised me. I don't see the fit there. Jacobs is a good one to talk about next. Let's see here. Jones getting cut. Definitely a take there. What else from you guys? Jeremiah and Alvin. Anyone else we haven't heard from here? Will, go ahead and put it into the YouTube chat there. And
I'm in the YouTube chat. I'm June.
oh, okay, cool. Jacobs. Yeah. So let's go. Let's talk about Josh Jacobs then, Jeremiah. You bring that up. What do you see? How do you see this impacting strictly offense from a fantasy perspective, Green Bay's players?
Well, I think it brings down the value for a lot of their wide receivers. People were thinking we're going to take a step. I don't know about taking guys like Dobbs and Reed right now, especially, and Watson, especially he's been hurt a lot. I think Jacobs is going to get the working load, and that A.J. Dillon will be the backup there, and that they will be a run-first team, take a lot of the pressure off Jordan Love as he continues progressing in his career.
All right. Anyone else have anything to add on Josh Jacobs? I'm going to kind of talk about this. I want to pull up his stats. So 2 years ago, this is season stats here. Jacobs led the NFL in rushing, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground. Does this have his receiving yards here? Yeah, another 400 yards receiving on top of that. So 2,000 total yards. Last year in Oakland, it was a mess. And the mess started with Jacobs. If you remember, he held out. He came in behind. He missed the first game of the season. The coach winds up getting fired halfway through the season. The coach seemed like the players and him were not getting along. It was just a mess in there. And Jacobs did settle down. If we look at him by game, like if you can see, this was the beginning of the year. Down the stretch here, he had some decent games here, right? And then he was out the last 4 games with an injury. And Jacobs is young, he's 27, and so still in his prime, very big potential to go back to those types of numbers. I think Green Bay is a better offense. The offense in general was kind of a mess in Oakland. That team that he put up those numbers with had Devontae Adams and Garoppolo was leading that team. So that was a losing team that Jacobs put up big numbers. I think you need to seriously consider drafting Jacobs. And let's just look at where he's going. It's not like he's going in the first round. Now, these numbers will all change once the draft starts to unfold. I expect him to move way up here. He's definitely in a better situation than Kenneth Walker. Walker gets hurt all the time. Rashid White, I expect his numbers to go down. That was just a usage last year. Pacheco, we talked about. I like his numbers going up. So Jacobs is here and rising. I mean, now you're getting into these Barkley's numbers are going to go down for sure. A-Chain is a high risk, high reward. So Jacobs, I guess he's right about where he should be, but this spot here at 59, that's the end of the 5th round, 6th round, basically, right? 5 times 12 is 60. So he's been going basically as an end of the 5th into the 6th round. That seems like it needs to go way up. A lot of value there. This, by the way, is why I love drafting fantasy football teams this time of year. Now, I've been getting Jacobs in the 6th round, and this is this $2 million tournament. Now, when people go to draft Jacobs, he's going to be going in the 3rd or 4th round. I've got an edge on the teams I've already drafted towards that $2 million prize because I was speculating that he might go somewhere good or bounce back. I never dreamed it was Green Bay. That was a big surprise for me, him going to Green Bay. And we want to talk about specifically impacting the offense and fantasy. Lisa, did you have a take on Green Bay?
Yeah, I love Josh Jacobs, and it's probably because we played him twice a year when he was with Las Vegas. But man, I'm just impressed with him. So him going, I would have loved to have picked him up because we, like you said, we need another running back. But him going to Green Bay was a little bit of a shock, and it was a little bit scary at first when we thought they were going to keep what's his face?
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, thank you. When we thought they were going to keep Aaron Jones, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then they couldn't come to an agreement, which was great. But I think that's a perfect fit for Josh Jacobs, and that young deep or offense is it's looking good. It's looking good. They're gonna be a team to contend with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, this puts Green Bay in the Super Bowl conversation, right? They were right there knocking at the door to the NFC Championship last year, and now they're adding in Jacobs. I don't see them becoming a run-first team the way Jeremiah said it. Jordan Love is the real deal, it seems like, 32 touchdowns in his first year starting. So I think Love's numbers will go down slightly. Because now they've got this amazing running back, especially at the goal line. A lot of Jordan Love's touchdowns last year came in close. And so those numbers will go down. And I think this will impact the Green Bay receivers stock going down a notch in the draft, right? Because they brought in a running back. So they should be downgrading each of those players a notch. By the way, the Green Bay receiving core is so spread out that alone should be impacting where you draft these players. Christian Watson is always hurt. I won't take him. But if he plays, he's the most talented of the 4 that are there, and that's going to hurt the other guys' numbers. Jaden Reed last year was the best player on that team. He had 10 touchdowns as a rookie. I like him the best of everyone who's there. Dobbs played awesome in the playoffs. I like Dobbs. He's been going in the later rounds. Wicks is the 4th guy in there. I'm not taking him at all. I see him as the odd man out. There's just not going to be enough balls to go around. Remember last year Watson didn't play. That's why the three of them were getting so many good yards there. I also expect them to start to use the tight end more this year. So all their receivers should be down a little bit from where we've been seeing them. All right, we haven't heard from Jason. Jason, what are you seeing in free agency that really caught your eye that is going to impact things in fantasy football?
What's going on, everybody? Man, I'm just sitting back looking at all this stuff unfold. I I really this is like my second year getting into fantasy football, so I'm really like just kind of learning things on the fly. Um, but like the Josh Jacobs thing, that was a surprise to me. I like that. I like that for him. He's had some rough years in Vegas, so like that'll be a good change for him. And Jared Judy, man, I've drafted him last year in my draft. Got some pretty good numbers off of him. Aaron Jones, that was another one that I drafted. That was my second running back. And that it's just so from the fantasy standpoint, I mean, I'm just like I
Well,
said.
Jerry Jeudy was a bust last year. The year before he was good, but last year he was a bust.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It was when I had it was one of those years I had him. He was doing all right, but like
Stephen Smith Sr. called him a jag.
yeah, I remember he walked behind him. He was like, I'm gonna be the bigger man and not even say nothing to him. Like, yeah, but and
Yeah.
just learning on, just like I said, it's my second year, so I'm just learning how to do this fantasy football thing. So
Well,
I'm like a
welcome
bias.
people at all levels and all perspectives here. That's what makes this so unique. Who's your hometown team?
My team. I'm Niners all day. So
Niners, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, as free agent thing goes with them, all I'm seeing is just them trying to get our guys, our offensive guys signed back. I know we got Leonard Floyd from Buffalo, so that was a good pick. That was a good pickup. So
When you're as loaded as the Niners, you don't have much going on.
yeah, not much. trying to like I just want to get Brandon Ayuk get back, get him back and just because I don't want to lose that guy. That's Brock Purdy's primary target.
Yeah, for sure. Ayuk has really blossomed. He's been going really high in the second rounds of fantasy football drafts this year, but deservedly so on last year's numbers. He's passed Debo Samuel as the most valuable fantasy asset there. Debo always kind of gets hurt. It seems like you know what you're getting when you draft him. So let's do a rundown of some of the fantasy of some of the players signings. We haven't even touched on them all yet. And if someone has a take on one of these, just use the Zoom raise of hand and I'll call on you. So Austin Eckler to the Redskins. This is an interesting pick. I know Will is a big Eckler fan. Let's kind of think about what this means for Washington, what this means for San Diego. Let's start on the Washington side of this. Jeremiah's got his hand up. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I think Eckler's really going to help, especially with them drafting a quarterback, whether it be Daniels or Drake May. That'll help them coming into the league a lot. He's older. No one expects the Redskins to go anywhere this year. They're probably bottom of the barrel, them or the Giants in the NFC East. But I think he'll be a good addition to help a young quarterback, not a good addition for fantasy. I wouldn't look to pick him up in the early rounds. Will can have him at number 5.
All right, Jordan, what's your take on Washington and Eckler?
Well, I think like Jeremiah said, I think it's going to be great veteran leadership. Like I really don't see Austin Eckler going to make a crazy impact. I'm not worried as a Cowboys fan, to be honest. It's the Washington Commanders. I'm not worried about it at all. But it's like it does look like the Washington Commanders are definitely going like 110% definitely going to draft a quarterback based on like they're just signing a bunch of players, offensive players. Like I feel like Dan Quinn is definitely like Cliff Kingsbury, trying to set up the offense of what he wants and everything, and he's definitely trying to like give the pieces, at least the veteran pieces for right now, to get the quarterback so he can learn and don't have to worry about being all great at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Kingsbury. I think that's a key point. Washington signing him. He's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, right? He coached Caleb in college. Everyone thinks they brought him in to get Caleb somehow. It still wouldn't surprise me if Washington sells the house and somehow trades up to number one. But as of now, it looks like Washington will have number two and likely be going with Jaden Daniels and rebuilding. So to me, the Eckler move does not make sense, but most of what Washington does not make sense to me. To me, Eckler, bringing in Eckler, he's a 30-year-old running back. It's a win now move, and you're really not trying to win now, are you? Maybe Washington thinks they can compete for the wild card somehow. If you look at what Eckler did last year, he was in the decline. So he's already showing the wear and tear of being older. His numbers were way down last year. This is his stat line. 159 fantasy points is barely worthy of starting. Compared to the 2 years previously, he was the number one running back in fantasy, over 300 yards. And this is just another example of how running backs decline at 29, 30. And I mean, Eckler was amazing, and he was in amazing shape last year, but it doesn't matter. Like, the body, just to wear and tear the miles. So when you're considering guys like Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones, this is just another example of why not to sign them. They're just going to break down like this. What's particularly surprising to me about this is Brian Robinson had a good season last year for Washington. He showed that he can run the ball, he can catch the ball. I'm trying to find him on our list here, and just look at his numbers last year were better than the numbers of here he is, of Austin Eckler. And so yeah, he had 700 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns. That doesn't sound that great, but he missed a few games. And then another 4 touchdowns through the air. Yeah, so he can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He's in his second year. It just, they're the same type of player. Why don't you want to continue playing the young Robinson? Why are you wasting your free agent money on Eckler, who does the same things, but is an older version? Makes no sense to me. Now you really can't draft either of these guys in fantasy, because they're going to split up all the touchdowns and the yards between the two of them. It really doesn't bode well for either of them. And the Washington receivers, Washington receivers have had decent numbers the past year. Well, McLaughlin has. I expect all their receiving numbers to go up slightly more when they get some better quarterbacking there. All right, so that's Washington. Let's continue with some of these other takes. And again, if anybody has any takes on these, just go ahead and raise your hand. The next up on our list was the Raiders. The Raiders are signing Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew made the Pro Bowl this past year. He actually played pretty well. Indianapolis almost made the playoffs. Let's take takes on Gardner Minshew, if anybody has anything. Lisa has her hand up. Go ahead.
I am thrilled. I am thrilled that the Raiders have selected Gardner Minshew to compete with Aiden O'Connell for possibly the starting position. So bring it on. Come on, Raiders. Yeah. I'm excited. So let's go.
Come on. The KC fans are excited. You made a bad move, but most of the Raiders moves are bad. They lost Jacobs, so that made them a lot worse. They're probably going to have to go with Zamir White now. And he was decent last year, but not Jacobs. And now you're bringing in Gardner Minshew. To me, this signals Oakland is going to draft a quarterback. None of these guys are good quarterbacks. To me, you bring in Minshew to maybe just keep the city happy for a year, and you draft Penix or Bo Nix. I kind of see Oakland going for Penix, maybe in the late first round. Maybe they trade back and get Penix. Because their pick's pretty high. To me, this is a signal that Oakland is going to bring in a rookie quarterback. Nobody thinks Minshew can be the answer to anything. Minshew, while he's not good in real life, he actually is an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell, in my opinion, which means Devontae Adams for fantasy, I think, is still right where he is. Now, Devontae was 30 last year. His production dropped off a little bit. And I expect it to continue to drop off a little bit. But Minshew actually is going to be slightly better quarterbacking. So Davante Adams, and let's just look at Davante Adams' numbers, because I think he's a really interesting player. He's been going late second round. Last year he was a first round fantasy pick. If we look at where he is going this year in fantasy, and again, this is such early speculation, but this year, Davante Adams has been going at number 21, right? 24 is second round. So he's going late second round, falling into the third round. Maybe they trade him. If they trade him to the Jets and he gets back with Rodgers, that could be huge for him. But I think that's a real long shot unless the Raiders are just going to totally blow it up and rebuild. They might be going that direction. Letting Jacobs go is kind of a step in that direction. I like Adams. To me is still, Adams to me, if you look at his numbers, right? 280, 280, right? I need my glasses to read that. And 213. And those were all 3 years. The 2 years at Oakland were with bad quarterbacking, and he still put up good numbers. So he's still, to me, a viable pick here based on track record. To me, Ayuk has only had the one good year. He's younger, right? So I don't know, it depends which way you would want to go there. People taking Harrison this high is nuts, in my opinion. Nico Collins, I'm not real high on him. He had great stats, but it was all after Tank Dell went down. And we'll talk more about him in another episode. To me, he is going way too high there. I like Davante Adams. I like Diggs. Rashee Rice is another one. We'll go more into him with Lisa, but I do not see his numbers going up. He was only 173 last year fantasy. People are putting him up here like suddenly he's gonna be 50% better. I don't see that happening at all.
You have to remember he didn't really have any production in the first half of the season because he was learning and they weren't really putting him in. And when they were putting him in, everybody was dropping balls. So you have to remember that.
Yeah, but there was no other receivers that were viable this year. They're going to get some better weapons in there to be able to spread the ball around a lot more.
That's true.
And I think so. I don't see his stats. I mean, he'll continue to improve, but I don't see his stats getting significantly better. We'll do a whole show on Casey and Rice.
I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say real quick. I just feel badly for Davante. I mean, he went there to try to, reconnect and have that, that chemistry, and everything fell apart, and he's so good. And I just feel like he's just wasting away in Las Vegas. So I really feel badly for him.
And he's at the end now at 31. This is when receivers usually hit the wall around 30, 31. And so, I mean, to me, he took the money. He took the money and left Green Bay. He sold out. I mean, nothing wrong with that, right? They offered him a huge amount of money. And this is what happens when you take the money and go to Oakland. So he kind of got what he was asking for over there. I mean, he thought it was going to be Carr. He thought it was going to be the money and a good situation. And it's not what they promised him at all. That happens to a lot of us. We take a job and they promised us it was going to be one thing, and it winds up being something completely different. Let's keep going through these free agents. Gus Edwards to the Chargers is a minor but interesting move. Gus Edwards had a career year last year, filling in for Baltimore, but he wasn't slated to be Baltimore's starter, but he had a great year last year. He's a great goal line back. I don't know that he could be an every down back. Will, did you have your hand up to talk about the Chargers?
Yeah, I was going to mention Gus. I like him, man. I think the Ravens, they had a lot of running backs that they brought in. And I mean, they lost Jonathan Kelly, so they really don't have a good second back. So if the Chargers don't draft or take a second running back, he could be a top 20 back, maybe even running back number 2. I really like Gus Edwards a lot.
Yeah. So, Gus Edwards, again, he had a productive year last year. To me, he signals, this is a signal, the fact that they're bringing in Edwards, that they are drafting a running back. It's Harbaugh there, right? So your favorite guy is sitting there for him, right? Don't you love the Michigan running back?
I do like Corum. Yeah. That'd be a good combination too, because him and Eckler would not have worked well at all.
I totally disagree. I think Corum is the goal line guy. Corum is one of the best goal line college running backs we've ever seen. And that's what Gus Edwards' specialty is the goal line. So to me, they're two of the same. It's a weird fit. It to me, this signals that Harbaugh's not going Corum in the draft, which it's surprising. I've been taking Corum thinking that Harbaugh's going to draft him in the second round. They have the 5th pick in the second round, and they're going to hand the reins to Blake Corum. I think you kind of put this idea in my head, Will, that that you thought Corum, could be a starting NFL quarterback.
Well, I think I said JJ, man. I was a big JJ guy.
Yeah.
I'm not as much on Corum, but I like JJ McCarthy a lot.
Yeah, so now this says to me that they're going to draft somebody different than Corum, because I feel like it's the same as Edwards there. For sure, Harbaugh is a running coach. He is a running first coach, right? We saw this with McCarthy, right? They had games against Penn State and Ohio State where they barely passed the ball at all in the second half. So for anybody who thinks Justin Ebert is going to have this bounce back year in fantasy, I don't see it.
So talk to me about Edwards, man. Are you a fan of him now?
He's a goal line back. He's not somebody I would ever want in fantasy. I don't think he can be, last year he got all the carries in Baltimore. Everyone else in that Baltimore backfield sucked last year, and everything fell in his lap. So based on how many carries he got, he was productive with it last year. I don't think, if he's the only guy in San Diego, if somehow he's the only guy, then it would be another good year for him in there. But he's not going to be the only guy this year like he was last year. They're going to bring in somebody else probably and split the carries. I would have liked them to keep Eckler and bring Corum in as the goal line guy. To me, that would have been, Eckler can be just on third downs and you won't get as much wear and tear, and Corum can be the pounder. So but I wanted to just finish on Chargers receivers. I am avoiding like the plague. And Justin Herbert, I'm avoiding based on the Harbaugh run factor. Harbaugh is a run first coach. That's what that team's going to do. Jordan, did you have something to add on the Chargers?
Oh, I was going to honestly disagree. I really don't think the Chargers are going to draft a running back, especially with a first round pick. I really don't think so. I think
didn't
they're
say
definitely
first
going to
round
go
pick. They have a
receiver.
number 5 pick. There's no running backs that deserve to go that high.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like they're going to go wide receiver. I feel like they're definitely going to go wide receiver and try to get the guy from LSU. Because I don't think Marvin Harrison is going to be up there. I think they're probably going to get that other guy from LSU.
Malik Neighbors from LSU, even Romeo Odunze would be good there at number 5. Brock Bowers could fit there as an all-star tight end. They don't have a good tight end. I agree with you.
They may get like O-line because their line is not good either.
Yeah, Joe Alt is there. He's supposed to be a Hall of Fame lineman from Notre Dame. Any of those guys would be good for the Chargers. And then in the second round, they'll have a high second round pick again. That's where they likely will grab running back Blake Corum or someone else. Lisa, did you have something to add on the Chargers?
Yeah, I'm just a little it's interesting to listen to you guys because talking about Harbaugh and you're talking about run first, and then Jordan was talking about taking a wide receiver, or I'm sorry, wide receiver or running back? Did you say wide receiver?
Wide
Jordan?
receiver in the first round.
Okay, so you're talking about wide receiver, and Greg, you're talking about running back because Harbaugh is run first. But why would you run first if you've got Justin Herbert as your quarterback? So it makes sense to take a wide receiver, but why would Harbaugh cannot have a run first offense if you've got Herbert. Didn't you bring him in to accentuate the positives that Staley couldn't in your offense? It would be a disaster if everybody's talking about how talented this young Justin Herbert is, and then go for a run first offense.
Well, the best teams are able to run the ball and then have play action and throw the ball deep. And that's what I see them doing here. Chargers have been a top 10 passing team where they throw too much. They don't run it at all. And so Herbert's stats have been really inflated for these last 4 years. And they weren't even that good. I mean, a couple of years ago, they were fantastic. He had the one really good year. But all of these years, the last 3 years, they've been a pass happy offense. They've been throwing the ball to Eckler, throwing the ball to their receivers. It's not going to be like that with Harbaugh. It's going to be more balanced. If anything, it's going to be run first. Harbaugh went to the Super Bowl with the 49ers. That was a run first team. That's just his style. That's what's worked for him in college. That's how he believes in playing. That's how his career was. Harbaugh was a quarterback himself, but it was on run first teams. They went to the Super Bowl with him as the quarterback. So so Harbaugh will continue to develop Herbert, but I don't think he's going to unleash them statistically. And I think they'll be winning games. That's the knock on this team, is they're just not winning games, and it's because they've been throwing too much.
I can't say that. I can't knock you for that because that's exactly what we did. We were just kind of dink and dunk this year. So
I also want to point
totally
out that the Chargers just drafted a receiver last year with their number 1 pick, Quentin Richardson, I think is.
Yeah, but the receiver, no, he was not good.
Exactly. He was a complete bust. But he's there. Maybe they can get a little something out of him, but he seems like a complete bust. Keenan Allen is their veteran receiver. He's older. Supposedly they're shopping him. Mike Williams also is coming off an injury and is older. They're supposedly shopping him. So if they are going to draft a receiver, they got to move these other guys out of there because they're taking up a lot of the salary and they're taking up the receiver spots. Jeremiah, what do you expect to see from the Chargers?
Yeah, well, I definitely expect them to trade that 5th pick. With the quarterback needy teams in this draft being so deep at quarterback and offensive tackle, I expect Harbaugh, knowing the college players better than any coach in this league currently, is going to trade back, get as many picks as possible. There's a lot of gems. There's plenty of tackles. They have their starting left tackle with Slater. They don't need a Joe Alt. Joe Alt would help for sure, but they can trade back, get a plethora of picks. Harbaugh knows who's coming in. I think the Chargers going to be a good team for a long time.
Interesting how it turned out, actually. And it kind of makes me wonder if Harbaugh has been masterminding this whole thing. Because if you trade up to number 5 with the Chargers because you want a quarterback, you're probably going to be taking McCarthy there, right? So I could see the Vikings trading up, Denver trading up, the Raiders trading up. Somebody who wants McCarthy would trade up to number 5. And so maybe that's why Harbaugh's been talking up McCarthy. Wouldn't it be, it would be like one of the best poker bluffs of all time if Harbaugh comes out later and is like, I knew McCarthy sucked. That's why we ran the ball the whole time in Michigan, but I wanted to build up his value so somebody would trade up with me and take him. Like that would just be.
But what's the help of JJ McCarthy? Like, why is everybody like so on to JJ McCarthy right now?
Don't understand it either. He had a good combine from what I've seen. His measurables are good, but how many times have we seen that with guys like Jamarcus Russell, etc.? I'm not buying J.J. McCarthy, and I'm a Michigan fan. I don't see him at the pro level being the guy.
Yeah, exactly. There's been this like hype train going for him, led by Harbaugh. And isn't it interesting now that Harbaugh's the guy who's going to sell the number 5 pick with McCarthy? Like, I think we're seeing where this is coming from. Because to anybody who watched McCarthy play, it's like you weren't throwing the ball the whole time, the whole playoff run. You ran the ball down people's throats. Where is this hype for McCarthy? Like
that's what happens when the best quarterbacks don't participate in the combine, and then all these eyes. And because I don't watch a lot of college ball, I watch college ball based on who's playing, if I know them or if I know somebody who knows somebody. That's why I watch. I don't watch a lot of college ball, but I love the combine because I can see these people competing next to each other, doing the exact same thing, looking for certain things. And so you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, he's not as good as I thought, but why does everybody love him? So then you have to go back and watch the tape. But I think that's why his stock is so high, because these other guys who are like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, I don't need to, because they're taking me anyway. Then everybody doesn't get to see them. So we get to see all these other guys who are lesser than, and we're like, oh yeah, they're a lot better than we expected in the combine. And then we go back and watch their tape and we see, but that's why. I mean, if they don't participate, that's their prerogative. But if they don't participate, then the other guy's stocks rise.
This is giving me Mac Jones effect. This is giving me Mac Jones. When Mac Jones
And
won the
Zach
national
Wilson.
championship, he rose, and now JJ McCarthy, he won the national championship, and now his stock rising, and it just doesn't look good if somebody gonna
The only
well,
The
difference,
argument, Lisa, the guys who are at the top five, for example, Marvin Harrison, Caleb Williams, their thoughts, what their agents are telling them is you're already number 1, 2, or 3. You can only go down. Why would we go compete against
I get
people
that.
when you're already here?
I
right?
get that.
So,
I do. I really do. I understand that, but that doesn't stop the fact that because they don't participate and the other ones do, and maybe they have a good showing, then their stock rises. I mean, that's just the way it is. Even if, like Zach Wilson, his pro day, everybody loved him because he had one throw and then he goes and it's ridiculous, but that's the way it is. So, I mean,
yeah, it's very true. Jeremiah.
Sorry. I was just going to mention, she mentioned the quarterbacks winning national championships. Only 2 quarterbacks have won both a college national championship and a Super Bowl. So it's not like it's a common thing that happens. Hasn't actually happened since the 80s.
Yeah. If anything, there's no correlation between those things. Go ahead, Will.
when I think of JJ, and I made it clear, I have said he's the biggest question mark. Because I don't think we know what we're getting from him. You can't say he was bad at Michigan. He just didn't get to have a lot of chances. So I think he's a question mark.
And so to me, a question mark would go late first round. But now, I mean, they're talking about top 5. Like,
yeah, you're always going to hear.
But isn't it? Now we're getting the conspiracy going here. The team with the 5th pick is Harbaugh, so of course he's hyping him. Now he's going to try to sell that pick to Minnesota. That's exactly.
There's always going to be a quarterback
we just cracked the code on this thing.
Every year there's a quarterback they push, and in the end he doesn't get drafted until later on. Every year.
It could be. That's true. It could be. He could be the McCarthy. Could be the one sitting in the green room because everybody's like. It's kind of like the emperor's clothes, right? We all saw him play. He's not that good. And so, like, why is everybody saying he's good? All right, let's keep going down our list here to the Giants signing of Devin Singletary. We haven't heard from David on this, and I know you know a little bit about Singletary, having followed him. What are the Giants doing? They have $40 million in cap money. They let Barkley go. They're not bringing in anybody else on offense. I'm like, are they already tanking? Like, have they given up for the season, or what's going on? You think, David?
Yeah, for sure. So, hold on. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, so for sure. So the Giants are definitely going into a full rebuild mode. I think they were forced into a position by making it into the playoffs the year before that they had to give Daniel Jones that money. There was, what else could they do? But now I think they're going to go into a full tank mode. Singletary's going to be a solid running back. He's, obviously he's a downgrade from what Saquon can do on the field, but at least Singletary will be on the field. I don't think he has a history of injuries. He was solid for us last year. He hit over 1,000 scrimmage yards last year, and he didn't start till maybe a third of the way through the season. But I know you said you want to talk about offense, but you have to talk about this. That Brian Burns trade, oh my God. What the fact that they were able to pull that off, a 2nd and a 5th, and the Rams were offering 2 firsts, 3 firsts for Brian Burns. Whoever's running Carolina, I know they all got fired, but you need to fire them all again. The owner needs to fire himself. That was bad. So the fact that the Giants were able to get that trade, that was huge. Why they made the trade, though, if they're going into a rebuild, I don't know. But that's a good place to start for your rebuild because he's still pretty young. I think he's only 25, 26.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy maybe they can build around, or maybe they feel like they can flip him. You know, it's kind of like buying a house and you think you can flip it for a first round pick to somebody else.
Yeah, but with him and Thibodeau, that's going to be a dangerous defensive line.
Yeah. So fantasy wise, the Giants is the black hole. Do
I
not
wouldn't
draft
touch
any
anything
New
off the
York
Giants.
Giants this year. Literally, their receiving cast is abysmal, and it's a shame. I like Jalen Hyatt in college. He was a playmaker at Tennessee, but with no quarterbacking, he can go nowhere. Daniel Jones, 2 years ago, his fantasy stats were decent because he ran the ball for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns on top of his passing. I don't expect that to happen. They're gonna be benching him and playing some developmental guy by the end of this year. They are in full rebuild build mode. Darren Waller, forget about it. He hasn't been good in a couple of years now. Just do not draft any Giants to your fantasy team. And let's pray to the fantasy gods. They do not draft one of the big receivers. Romeo and Dunze, a lot of the mock drafts have the Giants taking them since they have nothing on offense. And that would just be a waste of a good player. By the same token, Carolina, what is Carolina doing? They have nothing on offense. Have they brought in anybody? We haven't seen them participating at all. Adam Thielen is old, put up decent numbers last year. I expect Carolina to draft a receiver in the second round. I'm hearing they love Ricky Purcell. I think is how you say his name, the Gators receiver. He's a possession receiver. Whoever they bring in will be good there and could be a good sleeper to look at late. They need a running back. Are they going back with Chuba Hubbard? They gave Miles, is it Miles Davis or is that the Jazz guy from the
Miles
Eagles?
Sanders. Miles
Miles
Sanders.
Sanders, yeah. Miles Sanders got a guaranteed deal, so he's still on the roster this year, but he couldn't even get on the field for them last year. That was such a bad signing.
Something I'm hearing about Carolina, and maybe Jeremiah can talk about this, is with T. Higgins requesting that trade. They're saying that he's on Carolina's radar, so I don't know if maybe someone else has heard about that. Jeremiah, maybe?
I've heard Carolina. I've also heard New England. But it's all rumors at this point. We'll see what happens.
What do you think Cincinnati would want for him? Because I mean, they Carolina just got a 2nd and 5th. Would a 2nd and 5th consummate the deal?
I don't know. I heard the second round pick from New England was what they were offering. I don't know how true that was. I don't know. We should have traded him last year when we saw this coming.
Would you want him, Greg?
I'm not impressed with T. Higgins. His fantasy stats have not been great the last 3 years. He's been decent, but I think Burrow can make anybody look good. So I don't think he's a true number 1 receiver. In his role as a number 2 receiver, he was flourishing. So I don't love him. I mean, New England's pretty desperate for talent. If New England is going to bring in Flacco and try to here's the only path that could make sense. If New England brings in Flacco, drafts Marvin Harrison, brings in T. Higgins, they have a team that they think maybe can compete offensively this year. They're never going to win a Super Bowl with that roster, but maybe that's the direction they're going. New England's got a lot of money to spend. And just like you don't want to go down with timeouts in your pocket, you don't want to go down not spending money. I suspect the New England is saving their money for Justin Fields. That's the move they're going to make, and they're going to throw $100 million at him to be their quarterback. There's not a lot of suitors left, so I think the price is getting cheaper and cheaper. Mac Jones got traded for just a 6th round pick to Jacksonville. New England's going to look at that and say, okay, Fields is a little bit better. We'll give you like a 4th round pick. And then, the Bears will say, no, we want a 1st, and they'll probably settle on like a 3rd. If they can get Fields for a 3rd, they got a big money. The problem with Fields for most teams is he's going to cost you a big contract, right? That's why he doesn't make sense for the Bears, is because they can get Caleb Williams on a cheap contract. But New England has the money. So if you have the money, then draft Marvin Harrison, bring in Fields, bring in T. Higgins. Now you're talking about a team that maybe they can, fit the puzzle pieces together. What do you think, Jordan?
I don't think signing Flacco is going to make the Patriots is going to be better because they already signed like a veteran control Jacoby Brissett, who is younger than Flacco and is a decent bridge quarterback if they want to do a bridge quarterback type deal. So I feel like I don't really think like they should draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great talent, but I would not be surprised they still may draft a quarterback. And like I think they're looking towards Drake May, which is
I hate Drake May.
yeah. I don't like it either. I really think they're going to try to draft a quarterback, but if they're able to get Justin Fields, I think it would be a good move for them and a good move for Justin to go into a situation like that because he's already been in the NFL, so he knows what the NFL is like.
Yeah. To me, Drake May is the next Zach Wilson. He is the guy that everybody says has a big arm. He's tall. He can run. He's got all those intangible things. And that's all true about Drake May. But the guy's not a winner. I watched a lot of his games the last 2 years. He's a 2-year starter for North Carolina. That's not even the biggest time games. He's losing to teams like NC State and Alcorn State. He's not a leader. He doesn't come up big in the clutch in their biggest rivalry games. And he's never had a big upset. You know, he never knocked off Clemson or FSU or had any of those games that you kind of make your name on as a college quarterback. So I will be devastated if New England drafts Drake May. If they do draft him, I will go get the jersey. I will rep our guy just like I rep Cam Newton when we had him. I will support him. I rep Mac Jones, even though I begrudgingly cried when we didn't draft Justin Fields and got stuck with Matt Jones. So this is our second chance at Fields. Everyone in New England wanted Fields in that draft, and it's our second chance at him. And it makes sense to go in for him. You got to bring in a guy like Jacoby Brissett because we have to negotiate with Chicago, right? So we're bluffing Chicago. We're going to tell them, oh, we're good with Jacoby Brissett, and we're going to draft a quarterback. That way, Chicago thinks nobody wants Fields, and the price goes down. That's what I see. New England is doing here. All right,
Do you like their coach or no?
Gerard Mayo.
Is that their coach? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo, you know, he's been running the defense for New England for the past few years. He's a Belichick guy. He played for Belichick and was an all-pro. And so it's kind of like just keeping the system going. We'll see. Sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out. He's got like a 2-year window to start winning with this team, or they will not be patient at all in New England. And
Well, It
so
seems like Justin Fields the market for him is already dwindled. So how much more can it dwindle?
yeah, exactly. Well, now we're just bickering over what picks for him, right? Everybody knows Chicago, you can't keep him. It's too late for you to keep him. You know, you got to take Caleb Williams. Unless, I mean, this is the ace in the hole is what if Washington just makes Chicago this offer they can't refuse to go down from 1 to 2. Washington takes Caleb Williams. Chicago takes Marvin Harrison at 2 and keeps Fields. I still think that's not out of the picture. But if you look at the teams that are in the sweepstakes, who needs a quarterback? The Raiders need a quarterback. They signed Gardner. Denver needs a quarterback. I don't think Sean Payton likes running quarterbacks. So I don't see that being a fit. He likes the quick passing guys. He's going to draft Bo Nix and he's a rebuild. Why would he bring in Fields as a win now guy? I don't think Denver wants him. Minnesota would love him. He'd be a great fit in Minnesota, but Chicago's not going to trade him in the division. That'd be nuts to trade Fields there. And so really that just leaves New England. Tennessee could be a long shot. Anywhere, Tennessee, yeah. I think, you know, Tennessee seems to want to see what they have in Will Levis. I mean, Will Levis, you know, was highly touted. He was that guy last year. He was the McCarthy. He was the guy that everybody said was like rising before the draft. They were like, oh, Will Levis, you know, is going to go top 5. And then I think he went in the 2nd round last year. Go ahead,
Are
Will.
the Steelers out of it, man? Could they just do a battle?
Now that they have Russ, yeah, with Russ.
They didn't sign him for anything. He was like cheap. He was like pennies.
But that's their plan. The Steelers are going to go. The Steelers are going to go with us, and I think that's great. I would
Okay.
fear the Steelers with Russ. To me, the Steelers are a legit threat to Mahomes and the Super Bowl now. Like you
Well, I
get
don't know about all
Pittsburgh,
that, but it was smart.
that they're a legit threat. I mean, Wilson has proven he can win in the clutch. They play good defense. They're going to run the ball down your throat, try to keep it away from Mahomes. Like that's Pittsburgh's best chance. I mean, then they will
I don't
be
think
a
they're
playoff
going to win a
contender.
Super Bowl, but they'll
So
like
you think
probably
Fields
go in
is
the second
done?
round of the playoffs.
I
I
didn't know
think
if they could do a
the
combo.
Steelers
Man.
have improved their team the best they possibly could improve their team. And I love everyone on that team. I love their fantasy stats going up because the fantasy stats they've had these last 2 years have been with Kenny Pickett. They've been awful. Kenny Pickett is an awful, awful bust. Now that Russ is coming in, I look for their receivers to go up. I love George Pickens to get better and start to get become a dominant player with Russ throwing in the ball. Russ's stats were good last year. Russ can still play based on his.
I think it's interesting that Russ and Tomlin are together. That does not seem like it fits to me, but I could be wrong. But what I do fear is the moon ball to Pickens. I do fear that because Russ can throw the long ball, so that does concern me a little bit. But I'm just interested to see how that dynamic between Russ and Tomlin is going to work.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. They're definitely two alphas, and somebody's going to have to give up there. And hopefully, Russ has been kind of humbled by this whole experience in Denver. And, Tomlin hopefully laid down the boundaries like this is how it's going to be. This has been my team for 20 years. And if you're coming here, it's going to be like this.
Breaking news. Jeremiah, this pertains to you. The Bengals just cut Joe Mixon and signed Zach Moss to a 2-year, $8 million.
Yeah. I'm going to get rid of Mixon. I like it.
Yeah, Mixon, that'll save a lot of money cutting Mixon. Interesting. You had that other guy, Chad Brown, right?
Hence Brown, yeah.
Yeah. And they were hyping him as the starter. So now they're bringing in Zach Moss.
And
Wow.
we re-signed Travion Williams to a 1-year deal earlier today as well, or announced we were going to. He's, I guess, he'll be the third back special teams guy.
Yeah, I loved it. To me, this shoots Zach Moss's stock way up in fantasy. If he's going to be the starting running back for the Bengals, whoever is in that role puts up numbers. We saw Mixon do it, even though he was getting long in the tooth. Perrine in those couple games he started. Whoever's starting for Cincinnati is a solid running back play. I guess it might be a training cap battle there, right? As far as who, I mean, I don't know if they're guaranteeing him the starting spot, but that's a good, there's a few more running backs we haven't talked about yet. I wanted to get to these before 10:30 and the Celtics game tips off, although we'll continue talking fantasy during that. But Tony Pollard to Tennessee. Does anybody think that Pollard was a disappointment in Dallas last year? I was very high on Pollard. When he was Zeke's backup, he was like the best backup in the league. And I was like, he's finally getting his chance last year. And then we saw like, he's just not that good. What's your take on him, Jordan?
Listen, honestly, good ratings. Good ratings. I really was like, when I saw Tony Pollard going to Tennessee, I'm just like, I didn't wipe no tear out my eye. Like, there was a reason why, like 2 years ago, Pollard was electrifying and like, oh my God, oh my God, and blah, 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 because he was a number 2 running back. Everybody was focused on Ezekiel Elliott, even though Ezekiel Elliott was like only had one leg, but they was still looking at Ezekiel Elliott. They wasn't looking at Tony Pollard. And then this year, he was just a total disappointment. Unless he had a full opening and he was wide open, he could not run the ball, especially in between the tackles, and it was just so disappointing. So when him going to Tennessee, I'm just like, okay, I ain't care. I really didn't care.
All right. Yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus. If anybody has anything different to say, I want to hear it, but we don't need to all say the same thing here about Tony Pollard. I'm looking for where he is going in drafting. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get many carries there at all. I think they're going to go with Tajay Spears going forward. I don't like him in fantasy at all this year. He'll be a change of pace back at best.
Yeah. Or just the backup, kind of like how Zeke was just the
Exactly.
backup last year in New England. Maybe that's what Pollard is going to do. I mean, they gave him a lot of money to just be a backup, but maybe that's how they're looking at it. I mean, Ty Spears, like I was high on him going into this year. So I was disappointed for Spears when they signed Pollard. I'm like, now they're going to split. Like they're kind of like the same type of guy and Pollard, but Pollard sucks at the goal line. That's where he really sucked for Dallas, extra bad last year. So like, and Spears is kind of small and good receiver. So they're kind of like the same. Doesn't make sense for me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say because I don't think that Pollard's like a power back. That's why. So, and I think that's why he didn't really. I don't want to say he didn't succeed in Dallas, but they were missing that power that Zeke had, so he couldn't replicate that. So yeah, I agree.
They're both the same. Yeah. So it doesn't make the best. If you're going to have two running backs, you want one to be the power guy and one to be the change of pace guy. And that's not what Tennessee's doing here. I mean, Tennessee's kind of in full rebuild.
Is Henry gone? Or is he still there?
Who?
Henry.
No, Henry is cut.
Henry,
they're
saying the Ravens are merging as a suitor for Henry. But as far as Tennessee goes, I actually think that's a good signing. Not specific. I don't think Tennessee's going to do anything, but for Tajay Spears, I think he needs that. I don't think you can put him as the guy right now. I think especially with younger running backs, they need somebody there like a Derrick Henry or a Tony Pollard to split those carries with. And then you kind of just have to take over that role. So I don't see Tony Pollard living out the full 3 years of that contract. Maybe he's there at that third year, but he probably gets cut after year 2.
Yeah, or if that, I don't know how much is guaranteed. Hopefully not much. Yeah, I think we all kind of see
cut, Greg. He got cut, you said?
Derrick Henry?
Yeah.
Well, his contract is up, so he's a free agent. He didn't really need to get cut. It's just his contract was up. So let's continue with who has signed. So DeAndre Swift to Chicago. I like this for Swift. Of all the places you're going to land, I thought Philly would bring back Swift. Swift was decent with Philly. I was kind of surprised at this, but Chicago offered him a pretty big deal. I think that this kills. I was liking Roshan Johnson as a sleeper. He was a rookie that they were touted last year. Herbert had his chance last year and kind of blew it. So now I would say those two are in the dead zone. And I think Swift will be decent. As he's a good receiver. And they'll have Caleb Williams there. I think Swift will be a decent starter. Unlike this situation, I think Pollard and Spears will kind of cut into each other's carries because they're similar. I don't see it here. I see more of Swift kind of being the go-to guy. I still don't see Swift as a top 10 fantasy back by any means at all. Chicago's going to struggle with a rookie quarterback, but I think as far as places he could have went, this is probably the place for him. And I see him as a top 20 running back because he'll be the main guy and he catches the ball. All right, let's continue to look here. Gabe Davis to Jacksonville. Maybe Davis will shine here. I mean, Davis has been boom or bust. I think, he kind of gets a laugh from everybody. They threw a lot of money at him. They could have brought Ridley back with that money. They say they still want to bring Ridley back, but I don't think they have the money left to make that happen. Davis over Ridley, this signals to me Davis is more of a deep guy. And I don't know. I don't think, with Davis being inconsistent, to me, this, if we're looking for fantasy impact, this says Christian Kirk is going to go back to being the main guy there. And they have another guy, Zay Jones, who was really good 2 years ago. He was out last year, hurt a lot. I look for Zay Jones and Christian Kirk's numbers to go up with Davis coming in and being inconsistent. Judy, we've already talked about. Let's see if there's anything else here that we haven't talked about. Mixon is being released.
You know who we haven't spoken about? I don't think. Did we talk about Russ to the Steelers?
Yeah, we touched on that. We were talking about
Did we
Tomlin.
talk about that earlier? Sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about how we expect Pickens stock to
Oh
go.
yeah, sorry, my bad.
So
I'm
that's
just
all
going through
right.
my note. I'm just going through my notes.
Yeah. Let's go around the horn for kind of last take from everyone on anything in particular that really caught your eye or that you're expecting to happen next, especially anything bold or unique that you might be expecting, and kind of in summary of everything. We'll start with you, Jeremiah. What do you think is going to happen next in free agency?
Oh, next. Derrick Henry to Cowboys is an easy one. I actually heard that he's already bought a home down there. So I don't know if that's as slam dunk as I've heard. But I don't know the cap situation in Kansas City, but what about T. Higgins to Kansas City? That could be a crazy splash. They need the big play receiver. Maybe we could get a few picks higher, getting 32 instead of the third pick in the second round if the Patriots were interested, like I'd heard.
Yeah, interesting. I don't think they have the money unless they move things around. And Kansas City just traded Tyreek to get a bunch of picks. They don't seem like they would now want to trade picks to bring back a receiver. It's like, why don't you just keep Tyreek if you wanted one of these big name, big expensive receivers? T. Higgins is looking for a lot of money, right? He's unhappy with the franchise tag. He wants like 25 million a year. So you got to be one of these teams that has a lot of money left, which would be like a New England, the New York Giants. I mean, you really want to screw the guy, send them to New York. um, let's keep going around here. Will, what do you expect to see happen next?
I'm looking it up now. I'm trying to figure out if Justin Jefferson could leave. I don't know
Not
if he
this
wants to
year.
stay.
I don't see him leaving this year.
All right, then Derrick Henry to the Browns. That's my other hot take.
To the Browns. Okay, they'd be a dark horse in this. David, what do you expect to see happen next?
Oof. It's gonna be a wild few days, but the running back market, how hot a commodity it is. I think this just goes to show how bad the NFL draft is going to be when it comes to running backs, because it seems like every other signing is a running back. But I mean, we got Joe Mixon out there. We've got Aaron Jones. King Henry still needs to be signed somewhere. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Nick Chubb could potentially be on the market. Kareem Hunt's on the market. So there's still a bunch of big names out there. So I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping that the Texans can sign Danielle Hunter. I actually played against them in high school, because we just lost Jonathan Grenard. So I'm hoping we can make a splash on the defensive line. But yeah, as far as like what I'm watching for is the running back market.
Yeah. Any of these veterans? I mean, you're going to need to bring in a veteran, maybe a Zeke or even Mixon. Like
Madison
you
is a
mentioned.
young gun. I thought Madison was a lot older than that. He's young.
He's a fumbling machine. I wouldn't touch him. I had him in fantasy last year, and you could just never trust him because he might fumble once or twice a game. But as far as like if gun to my head, if I had to choose one of these running backs, I would probably go for Derrick Henry. He missed a few games last year. It was still the number 2 rusher in the league. I mean, he pretty much was the offense. So if he can come in, even as our number 2 running back, pick up 600-700 yards, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, I can see that. All
I
right,
see that happening.
Lisa, give us your last take.
So I think that Mac Jones to the Jaguars is absolutely hilarious. But I think we're waiting for L'Jarius Sneed to be, either traded or to keep him so we can find out what we're going to do. If we're going to trade him, maybe we can bring in a wide receiver that's a veteran. If not, we're going to have to, go to the draft. Also, if we trade him, we're going to get some extra picks, so that would be awesome. But yeah, we're just waiting to see what's going to happen with L'Jarius and who we're going to pick up in free agency for the wide receiver for the Chiefs. So that's kind of what I'm waiting to find out what's going to happen there.
Makes sense. Yeah, KC is definitely a place we want to stay in touch from a fantasy perspective. Mahomes, I expect to see him have a bounce back season, and somebody's got to catch all those touchdowns. So if we can crack the code on who's going to be getting those touchdowns, that's where you're going to find some fantasy sleepers. In my last take, a couple things to think about. So I was brainstorming, what could the Vikings really do at quarterback? They're in a pretty desperate situation right now. I was looking through the list of people that are out there. I'm hearing some Sam Darnold whispers that he could get another chance. The 49ers were happy enough with him as their backup that they traded Trey Lance. Ryan Tannehill is also a guy. If you want somebody you got to keep Justin Jefferson happy or you're going to lose Jefferson next year, and then the whole franchise will fall apart. So maybe Tannehill could come in. Those would be kind of their best options, but it seems like they're going to go trade up to get McCarthy. My final take, I think that my biggest takeaway from today in free agency is Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. It's my biggest surprise, and I feel it impacts things across the spectrum fantasy-wise the most. Saquon now, Jalen Hurts does not throw to the running backs, so this is really going to hurt Saquon's stats. He's also not going to get the goal line touches because of the tush push. Additionally, I feel like the tush push could go down significantly with Kelsey retiring, that this could impact Jalen Hurts' stats. As now with Barkley having a great running back there could mean less running for Hurts and less passing for Hurts. So I'm now moving Jalen Hurts down several notches. He's been the clear number 2 fantasy quarterback. I don't feel you can trust him anymore. He had a bad ending to last year. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe there's coaching going on there. AJ Brown didn't seem happy. The Philly just, I'm avoiding Jalen Hurts. And if you're avoiding Jalen Hurts, if you think his numbers are going to go down, that's going to trickle into AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. You got to move those guys down slightly in the draft as well. So that's, I think, the biggest place for impact is in the Philly organization for fantasy wise. Well, this has been a super fun show talking fantasy. We're going to be back on again tomorrow night talking fantasy football. There'll be even more signings, more updates tomorrow. And specifically tomorrow, what we're going to be doing is talking about the impact of all of this free agency on the quarterbacks. We're going to be going through back and forth, looking at the stats of the quarterbacks and determining a consensus of how we rank these guys in terms of fantasy next year. Is Justin Herbert's numbers going to be way down? Are they going to be, where are they going to be with Harbaugh? What do we expect from Mahomes? Is Josh Allen, as the window closed for Buffalo, and they had to cut a lot of people. Buffalo's the opposite. They're over the cap. And so what does that mean for Josh Allen? Is he just a ticking time bomb with how much he runs that he's going to get injured? And what does that mean for Diggs? So we're going to get into all of that tomorrow on the show. Super excited to see you. Right now, we're going to transition into our coverage of tonight's NBA game. It is the Boston Celtics against the Portland Trailblazers. So me cue up. I'm going to kind